Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are going to talk about the brand new Audi Q4 e-Tron Sportback. Some of you might be wondering why the sudden change of positioning, because usually in my reviews I am sitting in front of the car. Well, that's because I already reviewed this car in its non-Sportback version, and you can find that video on my channel. I'm gonna drop a link right over here. So for now, we are going to focus on the differences alone on this car, because everything else is basically the same. So the front end up to the B-pillar is going to look exactly the same on these two cars. The main differences will start showing up once you go past the B-pillar towards the back. Now, up front, we have a short nose and a flat surface to make the cars as well, you could say as eco-friendly as possible, but most of all as aerodynamic as possible. We have the S-Line package installed on this car, so we have some small add-ons added on the front end to make this car look sportier and more aggressive than the non-S-Line versions. Other than that, once you get past the nose, you start noticing the differences. If you step to the side, you will notice that the roof line starts sloping down towards the back from the B-pillar onwards. Other than that, everything is the same, and this car is built like its brother on the MEB platform, which is Volkswagen Group's electric modular platform, destined to be used in a number of cars. So far, we've seen cars like the Skoda Enyaq using it, the Volkswagen ID4, the ID3, the Cupra Born, the e-Tron Q4, non-Sportback, and this is the Sportback version. There's a number of cars using the same platform, and they are actually using the same batteries, the same electric motors, and so on. The differences will come in the suspension department, finishing, and of course, exterior design. And in some cases, the technology offered, even though if you're willing to pay for it, I'm pretty confident you can fit a Skoda Enyaq with the same technology the Audi Q4 is offering. But I'm going to talk about that a bit later on. Now let's talk about the design. From the B-pillar backwards, you'll notice the sloping roofline, just like you would on any other Sportback model. What's a Sportback model? Well, think of it as a four-door coupe version. Think of the Audi A5 and the A5 Sportback. One is a classic coupe model with two doors, and the other is a five-door version. This is happening here as well, as we have a coupe silhouette on the sides, and we arrive at the rear end, which is quite muscular and quite beefy. It looks great, and it has these lights from one side to the other that look absolutely brilliant. Audi really knows its lighting, and it shows. They even do a little dance whenever you turn on and off the car. So we do have a small spoiler over here that it's meant to improve the aerodynamics of the car, and that's the main takeaway over here, because this car is supposed to have a drag coefficient of 0.26, whereas the non-Sportback version has a drag coefficient of 0.28. Theoretically, this should offer this car a longer range, but that's only going to come into play whenever you go outside the city limits, where higher speeds can actually work in favor of this car. If you're driving them around town, the differences will be rather small. So another difference is the boot capacity. To my surprise, theoretically, according to the spec sheet of this car, the boot of the Sportback version has 535 liters of space, whereas on the non-Sportback version, you have 520 liters. I had to double check to make sure these numbers are correct, and they are. I don't know how or why, because you do cut into the space over here, but that's the way it is. You have some extra storage space in under the floor, and I'm telling you right now, in real life, you will hardly notice the extra room in the back of this car. But overall, this is supposed to be a more aerodynamic car compared to the non-Sportback version, so we're going to test that out a bit later on. Now let's get inside and see how big the differences are in terms of headroom for the rear occupants. We're gonna start the interior review with the back seats because this is where the biggest differences happen. And as you can already tell, I don't really have a lot of room for my head in the back here. I should point out that I am 6 feet tall and about 250 pounds. So I'm not exactly your average sized human, but there isn't a lot of room over here either way. We do have a panoramic sunroof on this car, which does take away some of the space available in the back furthermore, but still, compared to the normal Q4, this is a cut in terms of headroom. Now, the driver's seat is adjusted in my comfortable driving position, and I am 6 feet tall, 250 pounds, as I already mentioned. So you could probably carry 4 adults of my size in here, but as long as they don't really mind their necks or their heads. There is plenty of knee room in here and plenty of foot room in the footwells. The floor is flat, so you have the impression of even more space over here. So yeah, as long as you're not too tall, or if your torso is not too tall, you probably have enough room over here in the back. We also have a armrest over here with 2 cup holders, and we have brilliant seats over here because this car has the S-Line package, and these S-Line seats are absolutely brilliant. You have leather with Alcantara in the middle with this quilted pattern over here, so they feel nice. What doesn't feel nice though is the fact that we have really bad plastic on the doors. I mean, for a car that has a sticker of nearly 90,000 euros, I would expect better plastic in the back. This is really not acceptable for a premium German car. I get that Audi used recycled plastic bottles to source the plastic for this panel in the back, but it's really not that great, and I would expect more from an Audi. You also have cup holders over here on the door, so if your rear passengers are really thirsty, they could probably house like 4 bottles in total in the back. You also have a HV panel over here, HVAC panel over here to adjust the temperature for the rear seats, 2 charging ports using Type-C connectors, and a 12-volt power plug. That's about it. Now let's get in the front and see what this car is all about. Since we already covered the interior of the Audi Q4 in that previous video I was telling you about, I'm not going to discuss it anymore when it comes to the front half of the cabin. That's because I already dissected, and there's really not much different. It's really not that much different to the regular one. They're basically the same. There's not that much to say anyway. So yeah, I have a 4x4 G63 right next to me right now. That's why it seems so big. Getting back to the car at hand here, our tester is the top version of the Q4 Sportback range right now. That means it's a Audi Q4 Sportback e-Tron 50 Quattro. That's a really long name, but if you want to be accurate, you have to say it all. What does that mean? It means it has all-wheel drive, because we have the Quattro name thrown in there, thanks to 2 electric motors, one on the front axle, one on the rear axle. Altogether, they can deliver up to 299 horsepower and 460 Newton meters of torque. And that allows the car to do a 0 to 100 km/h sprint in 6.2 seconds. So it's really not that slow off the line. Also, hidden right in the floor, we have a 82 kilowatt-hour battery. That's out of which you can use 76.6 kilowatt hours of energy. So the estimated range according to WLTP standards is 420 kilometers in a combined test cycle. Of course, that's not exactly what I got with this car, but there were some factors at play here. First of all, it's really cold out. During my time with the car, when I did my range test, the exterior temperature was close to 0 degrees Celsius, so it was really cold. Second of all, we have winter tires on this car, and from what I could gather, they are actually the wrong tires. They are wider than the recommended tire for this car on 19-inch wheels. They are 255 millimeters wide, whereas in the car's manual it says it should have 235 millimeter wide tires. I don't know why the people from Audi decided to go this way, but it is what it is. So the range was affected and the energy consumption levels were affected accordingly. So if you want to see my full range test with the car, I'm going to drop a link over here. I drove it around town on a couple of B roads and on the highway to get accurate readouts. Around town, the energy consumption was 27 kilowatt hours of energy for each 100 kilometers covered, and outside the city limit on the highway that went up to 30 kilowatt hours for each 100 kilometers covered. So the range observed was between 280 and 250 kilometers on average, depending on the driving situation. But I repeat, this was during winter time on winter tires that were wider than the recommended size. I'm guessing that during summer days with the right tires, with the right summer tires, this car would probably go over 300 kilometers of range around town, maybe even 400 easily. That's because I had the same car, well, I had the Q4 non-Sportback version during a couple of summer days, and the energy consumption recorded around town was 18 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers covered. So basically during winter time I saw an increase in energy consumption of about 50%. So that's quite a big difference, and of course it affects the overall range. Now what you will also be interested in is how fast you can recharge it. I'm going to speak only about the fastest recharging methods using a 135 kilowatt charger. The main issue is finding one, because most DC fast chargers tap out at 50 kilowatts. Some go up to 75, some to 100, but over 100 you'll have to search rather far and wide. Luckily you can also recharge this car at home using a 3-pin socket. You can use a wall box if you install one at home, and depending on the kind of charger you go for, the times will vary. Audi says that this car using a 135 kilowatt charger can go from 5 to 80% in just 33 minutes, but that's going to depend on a number of factors as well. If the batteries are warm enough, if the charger can deliver that power even though it's rated for more, and so on. I recharged this car from 5% to 80% in about 40 minutes using a 150 kilowatt charger, and the charging power never went over 100 kilowatts during my time spent at the charger. So I guess it was somewhat of an issue with the charger, I don't know. But 33 minutes versus 40 minutes, it's not that big of a difference, so 7 minutes lost, not really a big deal for me. But it might be for people looking to buy this car, so that's why I wanted to mention it. Let's talk about the way this car drives. Well, it is built on a bespoke electric platform, so that shows. It soaks up the bumps brilliantly. It is an Audi in the way it drives. It's very comfortable, very silent. The atmosphere inside is serene, and you couldn't really ask for more. It is a well-damped car. Even if you drive it in a sportier fashion, it will lean a bit, but not that much when you're in dynamic driving mode. And I like the fact that the suspension is incredibly quiet and comfortable at the same time. It is a brilliantly dampened car, to be honest. And I really can't complain on that end. As for the resources, well, as usual when it comes to electric cars, the resources of the electric motors are delivered instantly to the tip of your toes. And if you want to accelerate hard, the car will actually behave like a rear-wheel drive model. It will oversteer slightly until the all-wheel drive system figures out that the rear wheels have lost traction and takes you back to the optimum and safest line, because the front axle will only kick in when it needs to. This car has been designed to be as efficient as possible. So most of the time, even though you have 2 electric motors on board, most of the time only the rear one will be used. That means the front one will only kick in when you're in dynamic mode or when the car feels the need for more traction or feels that the rear end is slipping. So it's not really a quattro system, but it is an efficient one, at least in theory, and if it's not a winter month. Especially around town, it has a very short nose, so that means parking it will be rather easy. Visibility is good, except in the back where the sloping roofline and the sloping tailgate does cut into your vision, but you have a very good camera system on board, and that's going to help you out whenever you need to. The materials are of very good quality. Everything is finished to the Audi spec. Of course, as I said, the materials could be better in certain areas, but that's a topic for a different discussion. That said, this has been my review of the Audi Q4 e-Tron Sportback. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please drop a like, a comment, or a share. That would help me a lot. Until next time, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.